Playbook fans? We're back for another episode. I'm Sweetcar. I got Shovit Week 10 preview here. Make or break week for a lot of people vying for playoff positioning, or me just playing spoiler. So I have a new sense of motivation. If you listen to my last episode, I am more motivated than ever this week to pick up my first W. But just ironically enough, I happen to be playing Shovit. So there's no correlation to me trying my hardest this week at all whatsoever. How are you guys doing as week 10 officially kicks off here in about 2 hours?
Just getting ready for Thursday night football. And I'm sorry, man, but this week is not going to be the win that you get the W. Maybe next week, but I've got enough players that I feel very confident about. Sorry to burst the bubble there.
No, yeah, we've heard these stories before about how confident you guys are about your players.
And I don't think it takes 9 weeks of me losing 0-9 to finally burst my bubble. My bubble's been burst. I'm pretty much as low as I could possibly be. So there's nothing you could say that would make me feel any worse about my team than I already do. And so seeing positive injury trajectories for my star running back, number 1 overall pick, and Deebo Samuel trends my team in a better direction than it has been the last couple of weeks. So we'll jump into all of the action. Let's kick things off with water cooler talk. The Packers decimated with everything. Their team just sucks. They need all the help they can get. So what are they doing? They're taking flyers on former first-round draft picks. The Raiders cut Jonathan Abrams, safety, who was drafted in the first round in 2019. Really struggled with injuries and just basically in every aspect of his game. Couldn't cover and couldn't stop the run. So that's pretty bad. But the Packers said, you know what? We're in shambles. We need all the help we can get, and we are dropping like flies in terms of injuries as well. So they claim this former first-round safety, hoping to have him resurge his career with the green and yellow. I have not been doing a good job of watching Hard Knocks. I don't know why I haven't. You would think somebody as avid of a football fan as myself would be just hooked to Hard Knocks, but I did see the clip of Budda Baker. Did you guys catch that clip of Budda Baker trying to corral his team and
doing his best Jamal Williams impression?
Yeah, doing his best Dan Campbell and Jamal Williams impression of like borderline crying. And dude, if I'm in that locker room, I kind of want to cry because that team sucks and everybody sucks and nobody really seems to care. And every week you see clips of Kyler Murray just getting into it with a different player on the sideline. Did you guys see the Murray and Hopkins exchange? And so
I wish we could hear more Murray though, not as much Hopkins, but I really wanted to know what Murray's saying.
I think he said it sounded like he said, "I'm the best to do it" or something. I'll get it to you. I'm the best to do it, and I don't know about that claim.
Yeah, I mean, again, if there's one person you need to be keeping happy as Kyler Murray, it's DeAndre Hopkins. Because the minute Hopkins says "fuck you, Kyler," who's got your back at that point? Nobody. If it's only Cliff's on the hot seat pretty quickly here. So they could be a package deal and just get completely traded quarterback and coach if that's the first time that's ever happened. But yeah, you definitely don't want to be on DeAndre Hopkins' bad side. That's probably the one guy you need to try to corral to stay on your side. So I don't know what Kyler's doing, maybe playing a little bit too much COD. Micah Parsons is recruiting Odell Beckham Jr., as is the rest of the league, but he did straight up reach out to him and said, help us get to the Super Bowl, as if a player that just gets to the Super Bowl one year is an automatic guarantee that your team is going to make it. But he does have some aspirations. They definitely need help on the offensive side. CeeDee Lamb has been a disappointment, so I think they could use some pass catchers. So the OBJ recruitment is officially underway. It looks like I think Cowboys, 49ers, and Bills were the last 3 teams that I saw in the mix. So we'll see where he decides to go. As a 49ers Deebo Samuel owner, or if you're a CMC owner, you probably don't want him to go there just because you don't want to lose target share to somebody who is just the allure. We don't know if the production's actually there, but just the fact that it's OBJ, sometimes players will feel like they have to force feed him the ball because he's OBJ. And so you don't want that negative chemistry energy coming to your squad. Dallas seems like the perfect place for him because they got no chemistry and they're kind of all over the place. And it seems like something Jerry Jones would do. So stay tuned for OBJ sweepstakes. And then the last thing, we typically talk about injuries. There's usually a plethora of injuries, but we're recording on Thursday, so it just doesn't make sense to put out a slew of injuries for limited practice if they're going to be full participants tomorrow. So please follow us on Twitter at @OnlyPlaybook. Turn your notifications on. We will tweet out all of the latest injury updates tomorrow and Saturday heading into Sunday. That's it. Quick water cooler talk. Hopefully you guys got refreshed. Let's jump into the rundown. 4 teams on buys this week: the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New England Patriots, and the New York Jets. So again, bye weeks have started to surface, and more so than not. So make sure you are adjusting your lineups accordingly. That kicks us off with the first game on Sunday. The Seattle Seahawks are traveling to Germany as are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First NFL game, I believe, ever played in Germany. Bucs and Seahawks, Tampa Bay in this neutral site, favored by 3 points, over under 44.5. Just funny. Every week we see a Seattle Seahawks game. Every week we see the line, and every week they're underdogs and just completely disrespected. They are the better team on paper. They've been the better team all year, but that last drive from Tampa Tom and that I guess, momentum heading into this week seems like that's what Vegas is carrying forward, assuming that Tampa Bay should be the favorites here. It's interesting because Seattle actually matches up really, really well against Tampa Bay. Geno's continued to prove doubters wrong and inspire. Seattle's defense has been really, really good the last 4 weeks after starting the season really poor. It's funny because the reason they've been so good is 3 of their rookie draft picks, Charles Cross, Tariq Woolen, and I think Adolfo there's another linebacker. I forget his name. But those 3 guys who are all draftees because of the trade for Russell Wilson have become immediate impact players. And again, Seattle's turned around that defense. And the Bucs D is pretty good too. They're 4th against running backs, and Seattle's biggest weapon is Kenneth Walker. Obviously, he's still a must start, but there is something to not like because the matchup isn't ideal. If you're on the Seattle side, though, with Tampa Bay, if you're assuming that this is going to be a high-scoring game because Seattle's offense or defense is going to give up points to Tampa Bay, you're probably going to start everybody on the Seattle side. Geno's a good streamer. At this point, I think it's a disservice to even call him a streaming option. I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback, so you're probably starting him, again, because the quarterback position is so hit or miss. Ken Walker, obviously a must start. And if Geno Smith is as consistent as it's been all season, throwing 2 touchdown passes a game, you're probably pretty confident starting Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So I think, again, the matchup isn't great. Tampa Bay's defense is supposed to be better, but I'm expecting points to be scored. So I feel pretty confident starting those guys. Tom Brady, I don't think he's thrown for 2 touchdown passes all year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the last 5 weeks he's thrown for like 1-1-0-0-1. So he's yet to throw 2 touchdown passes over the course of the last 5-6 weeks. I'm probably not starting him. There's better options with higher upside. Again, you could have a quarterback that sucks throwing the ball, but as long as they run for 60 to 70 yards, you're almost matching the floor of Tom Brady's fantasy points. So makes him a tough start. Leonard Fournette, shove it. I mean, the matchup isn't the worst, so you're probably still starting him despite kind of tempering your own expectations of what you're probably going to get from him, but nothing has indicated that Rachaad White deserves the start in fantasy over Leonard Fournette, at least not yet, in my opinion. And then the receivers. I mean, what can you do? You got to start Evans. You probably got to start Godwin. Godwin's stats are insane, man. He has, I think, the most amount of targets or receptions this year without scoring a single touchdown. So we are expecting that hopefully at some point to regress to the mean, and touchdowns should start coming. But that, again, all comes with the offense of Tampa Bay, the passing game that has not been there all year. And then the one, dark horse, the guy that has caught a touchdown last week, Cade Otton. Cameron Brate did come back to practice, but I think with the concussion seriousness of the league this year, I don't know that Cameron Brate's going to play. And even if he does play, I think Cade Otton's already shown enough that he's worth the flyer as at the tight end position. And Seattle, I believe, is one of the worst against tight ends. So that makes him an even better option. So that's all I got for that game. 3-point spread. I don't know if I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid of the last final drive as well, but I think Tampa Bay is going to make a little bit of a run here in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
They have to. They cannot afford to not to. A fun fact, Tom Brady, I think he's 4-0 in international games. Not sure. I think it's just, I don't know where exactly he played, but he has been undefeated when the people are watching. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, makes sense. He's got the moxie.
All right, 7-1 versus 6-2. Leslie Frazier versus Minnesota. 0-4 Super Bowl teams on both sides. Dick's first game back versus Senor Hefferson. We got Harrison Phillips versus Buffalo. We got Case Keenum revenge game. We got Dalvin Cook versus his brother. I mean, what more storylines do you want? The only other thing that would make this better is if Josh Allen was playing. Minnesota Vikings visit the Bills. Bills are favored by 3.5, but that line just keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And that leads me to believe Josh Allen is probably not playing in this game. Over-under is at 43.5, and we are expecting freezing cold conditions and possible snow. Abort mission. Everything I've said good about the Vikings, just throw it out the window. I had no idea it was going to snow. I know they're an NFC North team, but we don't play that well in snow because we've been indoors most of our lives. And it's just, this is an alarming situation. It changes everything, throws everything off guard. They get to practice in that condition pretty much all the time. And here come the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins. And I'm not sure. This is cold. This is snowy. Some things have to be tempered here. So we're going to talk a little bit about all that. Bills are top 5 in points scored and yards, passing touchdowns. As you can see, I did not mention much running stuff. So if the Vikings can kind of force Case Keenum to not throw the ball well, this game is very much within reach. I think we talked about last game. I'm not afraid of, I'm not afraid of Case Keenum. The only thing that the Bills really, the energy that drives the Bills is Josh Allen and his significant handshakes with all of his teammates. They don't have that anymore. It's Case Keenum. He's just an average dude. You need a really good team, really good defense to drive Case Keenum's success, kind of like Kirk Cousins' side, but he's nowhere close. Key stat here that we need to talk about. Time of possession, the Bills are 25th. Okay, that makes sense, right? Josh Allen just drives the ball down the field. That's how they have their success. They're not going to be doing that. Case Keenum is not going to throw 60-yard bombs. That's not what's going to happen. It's just not. So Keenum they're going to have to adjust the game plan more to Keenum's abilities. And that means slowing the clock down a little bit more than they're used to. What does that mean? I mean, that's going to throw off a lot of things. The defense is going to have to adjust to this type of the lull that all their highs they get off of this is off of all those big play abilities. I mean, you might not think that matters, but it matters. It matters when your offense sets you up for success, that positive energy. You just look forward to going out there and dominating. They may not be able to do that. They may be doing a lot of punting. Defense is going to have to be, trying to keep the game alive at some points, I assume. So, and with their rushing being middle of the pack, I'm going on a limb here. On my first game of the week that I'm talking about, I'm going to be starting the Vikings defense. Call me crazy, call me whatever you want to call it. But right now, as of Thursday at 6:21 p.m., I got the Vikings on my starting lineup for defense. We'll see if that changes in the next couple of days. But right now, I see nothing convincing that I'm afraid of this team when everything on that team is about to shift dramatically. So, it's hard to assess Singletary and Diggs, the two other players you're confidently starting on that team because of what I just mentioned. Singletary is probably going to have to be running a little bit more, which could help him more, but I don't know. This is a very iffy situation with the snow factor in there. Everything is chaotic. That's why the line is kind of dropping a little bit closer and closer because I'm not sure if one team has such an upper hand over the other team anymore. Diggs, a lot of people drafted him pretty high. I drafted him probably higher than anybody in the history of America with my 4th overall pick. And I'm not convinced I'm going to get him with my usual 20 points this week. I'm tempering my expectations there. That's what I meant to talk about. Gabe Davis, I know that was a fun story in the beginning of the year with the deep bombs and everything. He's definitely not startable at this game. I would actually temper my expectations the biggest with Gabe Davis, unless obvious situations like if you're down by 17, predicted to lose by 17, stuff like that, then Gabe Davis has to be started. But if you're supposed to win this game, I would look for more solid floors for this game. That being said, Gabe Davis could easily still get 2 touchdowns. It's not like he's injured. It's not like other players are coming back that are better than him. He's still got the exact same role. It's just a Case Keenum situation, and there won't be those bombs that he is so capable of catching. Bills D is 1st in points, 4th in yards, 3rd in passing touchdowns allowed, 6th in rushing touchdowns allowed. I say all that, but I don't care about any of that because the Vikings are playing pretty well as a unit. So when you play well as a unit, you don't really have to be afraid of these stats because one thing could pop off over the other and it could still be a successful day. You still deploy all 4 Vikings because, like I said, you just don't care. You don't care about those stats I just mentioned. Everyone is semi-matchup proof at this point when we're talking about Jefferson, Thielen for his flex role. And we're talking about Dalvin Cook, and now we're talking about Hawkinson. So I think all those guys, you can pretty much start expecting solid floors. And then obviously boom situations much, much higher with Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. Even Cousins could be an entertainable thought here. Wait until Sunday morning to make that decision, depending on the snow. But I don't really see he's the king of all floors, right? You get 1 touchdown a game. He's on pace to break the record for most games with touchdowns thrown. So you get your solid floor. You will definitely get 12 points if you want 12 points minimum. Vikings offense is number one in not any major category, actually, in yards, in points, and touchdowns. Nowhere in the top 10 to be found. But like I said, they're playing as a unit, and that's kind of what you need to beat a team like Buffalo at home in a weird, cold snow game. So, this could very well be anyone's game, even though Buffalo is favored. One last stat that I'm going to mention, red zone defensive touchdowns allowed in the NFL since 2015 percentage. So the Vikings were 5th in 2015, 13th, 3rd, 2nd, 5th, 10th, 15th. So those are all pretty much in the top half of the league. Some of those are in the top 5. Some of those are in the top 3. So success has been a huge part of Vikings red zone defense. This year we're 32nd. So 7-1. A lot of that is bend, don't break. I've been saying bend, don't break since like week 2. Here's some evidence to prove the bend, don't break philosophy. It's nice. It's good when it works out, but it doesn't always, it's not sustainable. And I think it's already been a miracle that we've been able to do this for 8 games. But if you're allowing the team like the Bills to get into the red zone, it's not going to end well. So need to improve on that immediately.
One last thing I want to add. I know we always run long on Vikings game segments, but through 8 games, through 8 weeks, the Minnesota Vikings over the last 20 years, this year's Minnesota Vikings have the lowest margin of victory in wins with teams that are 7-1 or better. The 2022 Vikings average margin of victory is 7 points. The next best team, 2006 Colts, 7.3. What did they do? They won the Super Bowl. The next team, 2015 Panthers. What did they do? They made the Super Bowl and lost. You know who the number 4 team on this list is? The same Broncos that beat the Panthers that year in the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. Are you seeing a trend here, Chauvin? I see you smirking. What's the trend here? What's the common denominator? All these teams have a history of making it to the dance. It's great to be sitting here at 7-1 through 8 weeks. Let's finish the season the way this season is meant to be finished. And let's beat the fucking Buffalo Bills, because we want to beat them at their best with Josh Allen. We can't control the fact that Allen got hurt. So if he's hurt and he doesn't want to play, we should beat the Bills. We should not lose to the Bills if we're a serious Super Bowl contender.
Nice. I'm going to have a tough time following that, because we're talking about 2 contenders at Vikings and Bills going to Lions at Chicago Bears. Definitely not contenders.
2 number 1 draft pick contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom feeders of the NFL. Chicago is favored by 3 points. Over under is 48.5. And the Bears have been doing really well on offense, even though they're not
who we thought they were.
They are not who we thought they were. Yeah, we were clowning them all of, even preseason, but now they're playing well. They're playing to Justin Fields' strengths, is what they should have been doing all along. And it's working out for them offensively. Defense is a whole nother situation that they need to figure out. Both teams on defense are allowing a lot of rushing yards. Bears allow 147.2 rushing yards on the ground, and the Lions allow 148.8. So, just probably expect just more rushing for these 2 teams. The Lions, we at the beginning of the season, or first half of the season, right? Like, they were scoring 140 points in the first 4 games. Since then, only 48 points. So why is that not, with the offense that they have, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, they had Hawkinson at that point, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown is not correlating to touchdowns. And so I expect that to change this week. I think that the Lions will be able to get into the end zone against a lackluster Chicago Bears defense. On fantasy, you're going to hope for Amon-Ra St. Brown to have a breakout game. You're going to start Swift or Jamal Williams just because of the game script of running the ball, because both teams' defenses are poor at that. Justin Fields, my shining light and armor. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but anyways, that thing.
That's close.
That's what he is for me. That's what he's been for me the last 2 weeks. And so hopefully Justin Fields will show up, as long as, Detroit's probably going to put a spy on Justin Fields to prevent him from running the ball. I'm sure teams are not convinced that he could still use, if he has to pass the ball a lot, then you're going to play against that script. So you'll probably put a spy on him. And so let's see if the Lions figure it out. You might want to start Cole Kmet on the tight end, a streaming option. Cole Kmet has been getting into touchdowns and seeming like a good red zone target for Justin Fields. And then last but not least, Montgomery versus Herbert. They are both split in carries, but you could roll the dice. You definitely want to start Montgomery. Herbert, you can roll the dice on this game. And, with the run script that I expect, Herbert, it could be a start for you this week. I'm going to lean with the Bears. I just don't think that the Lions will be able to overcome the Chicago Bears offensive attack. And I think that they will be able to put up points. Yeah.
That's something you hear every day. I'm going Lions this game, actually. I think the Lions kind of figured it out a little bit as far as the passing game goes. I think Amon-Ra has a pretty good game. And I think that's going to be a problem for Chicago to try to come back. And I think that's when we'll see some mistakes by Justin Fields. He'll get his fantasy numbers, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, the Lions still have a pretty good offensive line. And that means they're going to score a good amount of points against a really bad Bears team. So I think, this is nothing crazy. Like, we're not talking about two really good teams here, but I think we'll get a pretty good game here. And I think the Lions pull this off.
Yeah, the Lions are decimated with injuries on the offensive side. So Amon-Ra St. Brown has to get fantasy points. I mean, DeAndre Swift is going to play, but I mean, I'm not as plug and play as you made it sound, just because they keep saying he's going to play. They're going to ease him in, and he's getting like barely any snap count. So it's like, yeah, you're starting him because of the name, because of where you drafted him. So you're almost like, why would I bench him? And then the 1 week he's finally like full go, he goes off and he's sitting on your bench. But I worry that this is an injury that's going to linger all season. And it's just going to be one of those where Jamal Williams has like 8 or 9 rushing touchdowns, I believe, or 8 or 9 touchdowns already this year. So he's more than capable as the backup. And the Lions are 1-6-1. So if they really, or whatever, 1-6. So if they really think that Swift is the future, they're probably going to continue to try to get him healthy. So I'm easily plugging in Williams. I mean, Swift, just because of the matchup, if you're desperate, because they have no receivers, they may just have to start lining him up in the slot. Outside of Amon-Ra, I mean, obviously they lost Hawkinson. Josh Reynolds, I don't think practiced today, and he's their number 2 receiver. Craig Reynolds, the 3rd running back or the backup to Williams with him out, is now hurt as well. So they're dropping like flies. So there's really not a lot of places this ball can go, which means Amon-Ra is due for like 15 targets this game. And, maybe out of necessity, you're starting Swift. But like Shashot said, even if the Lions win, even if, they make Fields throw the football, now that Fields has unleashed and unlocked his legs, his fantasy floor is foolproof. Like you're starting him without a single concern in the world.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Titans are hosting the worst offense in the NFL. The Denver Broncos come into town. Tennessee favored by 2.5 points. Lowest over under of the season, 36.5. Man, how did we get here, Russ? King Henry is on the rise. He's only getting better. He's only getting healthier. He's only getting older, but he seems to be the Benjamin Button effect. The older he gets, the better he gets. The more he gets used, the better he gets. So if there's one thing that's, obviously as fluid as can be in this game, it's Derrick Henry, and you're starting him. Obviously, even though Denver's defense is good, it doesn't matter. He's the only startable player on Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill is healthy now, so I'm curious if they're just going to go back to him, which I think they should, or if they roll the dice with Malik Willis, which they probably won't. I think Malik Willis has the opportunity now to be more of a, hey, we're going to use you in like red zone areas, like they use like Taysom Hill and stuff, where, just the threat of his legs makes that read option a little bit scarier than if Ryan Tannehill is doing it, right? So if they're smart, they'll try to work and ease Malik Willis in there, but Tannehill should probably start, but doesn't matter. I'm not starting any of the receivers. I'm not starting any player on that team outside of King Henry. And honestly, I may start the Tennessee Titans defense. The Broncos offense is so bad. They're so bad, and they've shown no signs of improving. I don't think Chase Edmonds is their savior. So they're going to be bad, and they're going to continue to be bad unless, over the bye week, they substantially change something, or Russell Wilson is no longer a robot. And the Broncos side, running back questions now with Chase Edmonds, it makes that situation even murkier. Before, you're like, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice with Gordon or Latavius, hoping that one of those guys falls into the end zone. Now, if Edmonds becomes the official 3rd down back, now even the 1st and 2nd down carries are being split between these two guys, and it makes this backfield something that I want absolutely no part of. So I'm not touching anybody in the backfield. I think if you're starting any pass catchers on Denver's side, Judy has shown more promise than Sutton right now. Sutton shouldn't be on your starting lineup until he shows that he can be productive, which he hasn't been over the last 5 weeks. And Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich is probably the most safest bet on this offense to start in terms of pass catchers, just because it seems like he's got a floor, and Russ likes to use his safety valve, and Greg Dulcich seems to be that. I think Tennessee wins this game. I think, maybe the running numbers aren't going to be as nice for Derrick Henry. Maybe it's not going to be as efficient, but he's still going to control the clock, and they're still going to hold on to the football. And Russ and Denver is notorious for going 3 and out. So their defense is going to be on the field a lot.
Absolutely. Melvin Gordon's demise and his downfall is exactly why you don't pay running backs money.
100%.
So the next game we have up, Jaguars visiting the Chiefs, the number 5 offensive leader in yards. Man, this team has been moving the ball like crazy. And I'm not talking about the Chiefs. We're talking about the Jaguars. The Jaguars are number 5 in offensive yards. We all knew that, right? Coming into this podcast, pretty easy thing to remember. But no, it's nice that they're number 5 because they run the ball so well and they keep getting those first downs one after another. However, they're visiting the number 4 leader in yards, and that is the Chiefs. The Chiefs are favored not by 9.5. Over under is at 50.5. The Jags' success has been pretty obvious. It's running the ball. There's some days where, people are like, maybe I should start T-Law against this team. And he gives you some games where he gets you like 16 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points. I think he's done that about 4 times or 5 times in the last 9 weeks. So some days it makes sense to take that risk. And I think this is one of those weeks. I think this is one of those weeks from a sheer desperation standpoint. They're going to have to move the ball. And yes, they can move the ball running the ball, but they're not like the Falcons or the Bears who choose to run the ball, even if they're down by 17 points with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I think they have enough offensive trust in T-Law's arms, even though I don't. And they will be trying to throw this ball. The ball is going to be in the air more than it has been over the last couple of days for the Jaguars, for sure. You just have to do that. Some of the more glaring stats, the Jags defense is 25th in passing touchdowns allowed, but number 10 in rush yards allowed. That's all great and all, but when you're 25th in passing touchdowns allowed against probably the greatest quarterback of all time, you're going to have a tough day, and that's why you see lines at 9.5. The Jaguars are 6th in offensive plays, 4th in rush yards, and 3rd in rushing touchdowns. So their focal point is going to be the same focal point that's been this focal point for the last couple of weeks, and that is run the ball with ETN. They have 9. They're 9th in red zone touchdowns. So when they do get down there, that's when the Ingram stuff starts happening. To those risk takers, that's a probability this week, probably the highest probability of that being a success over the last 10 weeks. That's enough for the Jaguars. I think the only other person you would start is Christian Kirk, who is probably a solid flex option this week. So go ahead and do that. Don't really think twice about that. If you're trying to start, comparable players like himself this week, I would just roll the dice and go with Christian Kirk. It's not really much of a roll the dice situation at this point. He's a number 1 wide receiver on that team. So yeah, go ahead and start him. On the Chiefs end, there's really not much to talk about. It's the same story. It's like the Vikings situation. You start the same players you start and you don't think about it, right? There are some holes here. No running backs can be trusted on this offense. It's like, you guys remember the diagram, the Venn diagram, right? You have Pacheco starting running back, getting all the early down stuff. And then you have McKinnon getting all the passing work. And then you have CEH in the middle, just like vulturing a little bit of everything. So in this case, you don't go with the CEH route. That's the least lucrative route unless they're up by a lot later in the game and they don't want to hurt their young rookie and they just give CEH all those carries. That's the best case scenario for CEH here. And then in the goal line situation, you never know what the Chiefs are going to do. So that's just a toss up of what's going to happen. But according to the game script, Pacheco should have a better game than these other two because it's the Jaguars, right? We suspect the Chiefs are going to have a good game. That means they want to see Pacheco used a little bit more because they haven't been able to. They've been in a lot of close games, believe it or not, since Pacheco became the starter. So he hasn't had those games where he got like 15 touches or 12 touches. And he's one of those ETN players. He's one of those guys. It's like they have one of those weapons right there. They just don't have to use them. And I think they would like to use them if the situation is open. And I think this game will be the Pacheco breakout fantasy game as far as, getting the most points he's had so far in fantasy.
Chiefs all day. Do you start Juju?
Yeah, my bad. I should have mentioned Juju. I just went straight to the running backs. But yeah, you start Juju. I think you start Juju every week. Solid floor. He'll get those targets. Next guy to get significant targets after Travis Kelce, and we all love that stat. Hardman has been a entertaining thought. I talked a little bit about him last week. He's got abdominal strain. Not sure how serious, but he's missed 2 days of practice. And quite frankly, they just don't need him. They need him in the long run, so they might try to take a safer approach. I hope they play him and then just don't use him, which is what I think is going to happen. Just don't let Riaz know that information. Yeah, that's the best case scenario for me, and I think that's what's going to happen. I don't see a world where they rule them out, because they would have ruled them out already if it's an abdominal situation. But the fact that they're kind of waiting, I think they're going to just like use them if they need to, but not use them if they don't have to.
If he does listen to this podcast, I'll make sure that at the beginning of your segment, I'll start off with some really haram shit. So he tries to just fast forward this segment, doesn't listen to it. And maybe he'll just miss this entire thing. One thing I'll add, if you're in a desperate ass situation like I am, where you have basically no receivers to start, I also entertain the idea of throwing in Zay Jones in there, Marvin Jones Jr. You're playing against the Chiefs. You're going to be down. You're going to have to throw the football. So desperate times call for desperate measures. So this is the matchup to try to throw in a flyer like those guys, because again, you expect the Chiefs to be winning. You expect the Jags to have to throw the football.
Yeah. I saw a tweet the other day, and it was kind of interesting because it said that Chiefs use their draft picks, their top draft picks, to get Kadarius Toney. So they're going to want to utilize him and give him more than the 2 catches that they did last week. So Kadarius Toney, be on the lookout. I mean, they'll probably try, if it works out for him, it could be wide receiver 1 in Chief land.
Yeah, especially with Mecole. If Mecole is hurt and he doesn't play, then Toney could be the guy that gets those end arounds in the red zone. And with Mecole finding the end zone the last 4 weeks or whatever, Kadarius could be the benefactor of that. But I don't want to be the guy that, has to be like, I told you so, and started Kadarius based off of nothing, right? Like, he's going to have the 1 week where he goes off, or like the 1 week, if he's going to be good, that starts off his, I'm good, or I can be viable. But I just don't know if I'm going to take the risk this week, knowing that, you're in the midst of a playoff heated race. I'm in the midst of playing, spoiler, to Shovit. So stop trying to get me to start Kadarius Toney. Shovit, I see what you're doing.
Yeah. You guys got to remember, like, I told you so, it doesn't win fantasy games, right? Yeah. Solid floors win fantasy games. And there's really no benefit of risking that at this point, unless you really have to. Like we mentioned, I think I mentioned some other player earlier. If you're down by 17, you go ahead and start those kind of players. Kadarius Toney is one of those players. So if you really need to, go ahead. But that's up to you.
Just to clarify, I'm not starting Kadarius Toney, but it's someone that you want to, keep. Yeah. If he's on your bench, keep him on your bench. If he's in free agency, keep him in free agency.
The reason you're bringing him up so much is because he's on my bench and I'm playing against you.
Oh, is he? So you know what?
You're trying to get me to start Kadarius Toney.
I honestly had no idea, but I will trade you for Kadarius Toney if you want to give him up.
Tyreek Hill 2.0. So just give me Tyreek Hill 1.0 and straight up. We'll get it done. Done deal.
Oh yeah, done deal. Yeah, let's make that happen.
Software update.
Perfect segue though, by the way, because we are talking about the next game, which is Browns at Dolphins. Miami is favored by 3.5 points. Over under is 48.5. So fantasy wise, you're going to start Tyreek Hill 1.0. Jalen Waddle. It's a split carry between Mostert and Jeff Wilson. And interestingly enough, in his first game, Jeff Wilson had 52% of the share. So that may be trending. That may trend upwards. I
just want to add something before you move away from Jeff Wilson. He had to dive like Superman style to get that touchdown to have a good fantasy day. So just keep that in mind. Everybody just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, touchdowns, that gets you the points, but being on the field also elevates and gives you a higher chance to get points too. So 52% over 48. I mean, it's basically 50-50, but
it's slim. But it's I'm glad you mentioned it, because Mozart was like 75% every single week before they traded for Wilson. And the first week they got Wilson, they didn't wait for him to learn the playbook or anything. He played more than half the game, so that is relevant for at least fantasy perspective.
There's no playbook to learn. It's the same playbook that he's used to.
Damn, you would think that other teams would know how to stop it then. We're just borrowing that same playbook.
The matchup favors them as well. The Browns are bottom 8 in rushing defense. So if it's a run heavy script, then Mostert or Wilson, pick your poison, I guess, in that sense. On the Browns side, you're going to start Nick Chubb. They are, they're brute force on the ground game. That's what they like to do. Their running game complements their passing game. So obviously Nick Chubb. Cooper, they're playing against the 23rd pass defense in the Dolphins. So Amari Cooper is a start for you as well. And David Njoku, he's coming back this week. Again, with that 23rd pass defense that the Miami Dolphins are, he's also a solid start now this week. So the line is favored at 3.5 points, and the Browns are coming off of a bye week. The Dolphins they score a lot of points, but the games are always close. Like, it's a margin of 4 points. So
their defense sucks.
Their defense sucks, and they find ways to win games because they have obviously Tua, Waddle, Hill, and so I'm staying away from any betting as far as this game goes. The Dolphins defense, they allowed the Bears to have 32 points last game. So, just staying away. It's all kind of pointing to the over with a high, points in this game, but the average at the Hard Rock Cafe or Hard Rock Stadium, I guess, is 33 points for total points of 33. So humid, muggy area. So, you probably want to shy away from the over under, even though it kind of seems like the over would hit, but historically it has not.
Yeah. Again, here's another desperation situation I'm talking about. You're playing against the Dolphins. I like the Dolphins as a matchup to play your weapons, right? And by weapons, they're not anything great, but a guy that's in my lineup right now, Donovan Peoples-Jones, playing receiver for the Browns. Again, the reason Miami is such an awesome team this year for a lot of reasons. One of the best reasons is everybody on their offense is startable, and that's because they're all good, but also because their defense is so bad that their offense has to keep scoring. That's why the game last week was a freaking fantasy fest for the Dolphins Bears, right? Everybody that's on the field is basically scoring, and the Dolphins score quickly, and then they get the ball right back because their defense gives up a quick score. So I'm looking at this matchup on the Brown side. Njoku's coming back from injury. I don't know if he'll be completely healthy. I had him in my other league, and he'd been doing really, really well for me. But because he got hurt and then the bye week, I had to drop him. So I don't know if I'm going to pick him back up and play him. But Donovan Peoples-Jones as a second receiver in this offense, again, if they're going to need to throw the football a lot, if Nick Chubb isn't going to be able to just run this game away, and Miami's a quick scoring offense, so I don't know how quickly the Browns can keep scoring by just running the football. That's another intriguing matchup, just strictly based on matchups. If you're desperate, obviously, which a lot of people aren't, but you're talking to the number one desperate person, probably in fantasy. Incoming Saquon career game, because he is playing against the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are the team you play when you want your running back to have a career day. And so the Giants are hosting the Texans this week. Giants at home, favored by 4.5 points, over under 40.5. If you've been listening to the pod, I've already gone through a laundry list of the different points and yards that the Texans defense has given up to opposing running backs. Said the same thing last week when they were playing on Thursday against Miles Sanders. For Miles Sanders to have a good game, he found the end zone. I think he had like 80 plus rushing yards. So good day for him. This is the ideal matchup for Saquon Barkley. Obviously, he is always a must start, but expecting a huge day from him. And the Giants have been good. Their defense has been good, but the one Achilles heel to their defense has been stopping the run. And this is where, again, incoming rookie Marshawn Lynch 2.0, Dameon Pierce, also an automatic start. Now, the only thing to keep in mind, he had 2 different injuries come up this week in practice that have surfaced that has limited him. I don't know if his situation is making him a game time decision on Sunday. I think he will still play, but again, it's early for injuries, so we will keep you up to date on that. Obviously, if he's not playing, there's going to have to be a running back there. So all of a sudden, Rex Burkhead becomes intriguing. Just has to start because people are dying to start starting running backs. But other than that, you could deploy Brandon Cooks if he plays. He's back at practice. He was upset about not getting traded, so he's kind of stuck there for the rest of the year. So all he can do is really produce, and that's really the only guy they have. But on the Giants side, the only guy I really like is Wan'Dale Robinson, but because I know the Giants can run the ball very, very successfully against Houston, they may not have to throw the football a ton. And this may make the read option with Danny Dimes a lot more intriguing, which makes Daniel Jones a decent flex option as well. But the one constant in this game, in my opinion, Saquon Barkley should have a huge game. Handing out 3 points to running backs. That's what the Texans defense does. Again, huge night for Saquon. If Pierce plays, he's probably the most confident player on the Houston Texans side that you start. And then the Giants defense also might be a good streaming option. Again, Houston does nothing to inspire me on their offense.
Saints, man, they're going to visit your Steelers. Shovit, Saints coming into town to visit the Steelers, but they're favored by 1.5. Over-unders at 40. I don't know what to make of this. It's 2 teams that have been underperforming on multiple levels. Steelers worse than the Saints, obviously. The Saints are actually not doing as bad as they look. They're actually number 2 in yards on offense. Number 2. Like, seriously? How? How are they number 2 in offensive yards? It's pretty impressive with literally nobody to throw the ball to and Andy Dalton at helm. They're still finding ways to get yardage. This would have been like I would have missed this question on an exam if I had to answer who is number 2 in the league in yards. It's the Saints. Pretty crazy. Passing yards, they're 6th. Passing touchdowns, they're 6th. Rushing yards, they're 9th. really, really hard to understand why this is even true, because the way they play football, it makes you want to rip your hair out. Sounds like all they do is throw the ball to Chris Olave and sometimes deep bombs to pick your poison randos throughout the year. And somehow, some way, they're making things happen. They're kind of just hanging in there. They're 29th in points, however, so they're moving the ball, which is great, but they're not scoring points. This is why Will Lutz has been in my lineup multiple times in a lot of different leagues. It makes sense. If your team's getting a lot of yardage and not scoring touchdowns, you better have their kicker. They're middle of the pack in passing yards allowed, and they're 23rd in rushing yards allowed. And that is where they get destroyed. And you know what that means?
Jalen Warren time.
Or that. But I'm thinking it's Najee Harris game of the year so far. It kind of has to, right? You're coming off of a lot of fingers being pointed at you. Did they just have their bye week too, Steelers? Yeah, coming off of a bye. At home, cold climate, and against number 23rd ranked rush defense, right? If you can't succeed with that, then next week is Jalen Warren time, 100%. Just book it. Pick him up right now. If you're anticipating a bad game from Najee Harris, you better have Warren on your team, because the report's out. It's been out for the last 3 days, and it's saying Warren is definitely getting more touches. It's happening. It's already happening, which means this is your contract day, Najee Harris. Do you want a job in the NFL? Do you want to be Trent Richardson? Because right now you're more Trent Richardson than you are the Najee Harris that we're used to. So this is it. Back against the wall. Everything goes. Anything goes. Najee Harris is fighting for his job right now. So that being said, if you're going to play this bad and this is all looming, you think he would like harness some sort of energy and do some Najee shit. And so that's what I'm kind of banking on. I'm expecting him to have a fairly good day. Nothing crazy like a 26-point day, which, would be pretty impressive. But I think, 17 could happen. This is one of those days where he's fighting for his job, quite frankly. Steelers D is 29th in passing yards and 9th in rushing yards. So Chris Olave day, Shobit's got all these players on his team, unfortunately, but I also have Chris Olave. He's been a superstar in every aspect. He was my early season, got to have him on your team player, and he's getting all the love because of the lack of other receivers on the team that are even remotely good. So probably stable days from Chris Olave here on out. Kamara's got a little bit higher floor than normal because of the passing work he's going to be getting. Steelers, 32nd in real points, 30th in fantasy points on offense, 26th in passing yards, 29th in rushing yards. All that means is the defense is going to be on the field more, which means Alvin Kamara is going to be on the field more. Steelers defense, 29th in passing yards, 9th in rushing yards. So the rushing ability to stop the rushing is still there. They're still doing a fairly good job. That's why the games are a little bit closer than, or the over-unders are a little bit lower in Steelers games. But they're 29th in passing yards, and a lot of that is just the last couple of weeks. They've been kind of getting destroyed. And I think because of that, everything points towards Alvin Kamara getting a couple of more catches than he's been getting. So typical day for Kamara is what I expect. On the Steelers end of who to start, who to not start, Pickens, people are forgetting about Pickens. It's just been one bye week, and how dare they just quickly forget. And I think having him on your team, picking him up, he's a free agent again in a lot of leagues, which is pretty dumb. But some other players like Terrence Marshall and them are getting a lot of attention. Recency bias is a thing. And just don't forget about Pickens. He's a solid football player. I'm not saying the situation is great, but he'll catch anything thrown to you. So that being said, make sure if he's available, he's no longer available. Deontay Johnson, it's sad to say, but he's kind of, I'm not banking on Deontay Johnson to win me weeks anymore. Najee Harris, we just talked about. So that's it as far as Steelers and Saints. Anything else besides maybe like a little bit of Taysom Hill sprinkling here and there that you guys would consider starting?
No, I think you got it all. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm just hopeful that coming off the bye week for the Steelers is going to be the X factor here. A little bit more time to learn the playbook.
I'm hoping Jalen Warren got that extra week of reps in, and now he just comes in and starting running back, and Najee Harris is on the bench.
Yeah, all it takes is one big play by Warren, and they'll be like, let's just go with this for now.
I mean, a lot of beat writers for the Steelers are definitely saying that Warren is going to get more targets or more carries than Najee Harris. If that's just like you said, like to say Fugazi or not. I mean,
no, that's not a Fugazi. That's all over the place. It's not just
in terms of whether that will actually happen or not. Like that's going to be.
it's not one of those things that you can trick the opponents with, because the opponents will be like, yeah, give Najee the ball more. We don't give a shit, right? So it can't be Fugazi because you're not reverse psychologing anybody. They're gonna be like, oh, you're stupid, so you're still playing Najee, who sucks. Or it's the obvious guy. You change it up just to see what Jaylen Warren has. So I think, again, it's not like you should start Jaylen Warren this week, and it's not like you should bench Najee Harris this week. But I'm hoping there's a shift. I'm hoping there's a shift for a lot of factors.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Colts at Raiders. Vegas is favored by 6 points. Over under is 42.5. This is the first game with the new head coach, Jeff Saturday, from the seats of ESPN to seats of Colts land. So this should be interesting to see how he leads this team. Interesting matchup for the Raiders and Colts is that defensive coordinator Gus Bradley used to be the defensive coordinator for Las Vegas Raiders last week. So he probably knows a thing or two about Derek Carr and his tendencies, giving the Colts a little bit of jolt that they desperately need. The Raiders give up a lot of rushing yards. They gave up 168 rushing yards to Travis Etienne last week. So Jonathan Taylor, owners are probably excited to start him. Hopefully he's not going to be in a what's that called? A snap count.
You're just hoping all my players that had an injury designation are going to have some snap. You're like, hopefully Debo's not a snap. Not every questionable designation warrants snap count, Chauvin. You just got me all paranoid and shit. Like, oh, you may be in a snap count. Are you sure you're not listening to Bend Over and they're not legitimate sources? And you have me literally going back and be like, oh shit, did I just get bend overed?
No, I think that was legit. He's playing. He's starting. You're definitely going to put him on your lineup if you have him. So speaking of fantasy, Jonathan Taylor is probably the only guy from the Colts that I would start. And you're not starting Michael Pittman or Alec Pierce until you see more from.
I mean, if there's a game, it's this one. It's the Raiders. They're 32nd in pass defense. It can't get any better than this. That means you're never starting Michael Pittman again. Are you willing to go down that route? I don't think it's that for sure yet. I think if you're gonna start Michael Pittman and you don't have better options, I wouldn't be that afraid. This is like the least afraid I'll be starting.
That sounds fair. Michael Pittman to me has been in the Robert Woods category just because of Sam Ehlinger. So that worries me a little bit. On the Raiders side, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, you're definitely going to start. Foster Moreau is a intriguing start here, and so is Mac Hollins. The Hunter Renfrow is down; he's in the IR, so they've got to get the ball somewhere, and so that you can stream these guys and expect for the best. So interesting stat, the Colts quarterbacks are sacked on 9.1% of dropbacks, which is the 28th in the league. So only a 9.1%, and have allowed the most sacks at 35. So defensive linemen are just finding ways to get to the quarterback. And the Raiders are last in sacking opposing quarterbacks at 3.1% of dropbacks, 9 total. So
more stats in favor of the Colts wide receivers. They never get sacked, so he's going to have time to throw the ball.
Well, no, they do. They allow the most sacks. But
the Raiders don't sack anybody.
But they just don't sack anybody. I mean, one of them is going to come out on top, but which one it is, I mean, it's just,
your money should never be on the Raiders. Have we learned anything? Your money should never be on the Raiders.
Yeah. So, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, man. If there's a week to do it, it's this week, my man. Just I only will get a victory if any week. The rest of the year, I will only win if Jonathan Taylor has a good game. So let's hope he does, or at least I hope he does. The Packers are hosting the Dallas Cowboys at home. Dallas on the road, favored by 5 points, over under 43. Weird year, weird world in Packer land this year. Zeke injury for the Cowboys. They're still monitoring him. He's practiced limited fashion a couple of days, says they're progressing towards playing, but also I don't think they necessarily need to rush him because Pollard is so much better. So I could see him sitting an extra week, which means if he does sit, Tony Pollard, automatic start, no questions asked. Aaron Jones still questionable. On the Packers side, obviously, if he plays, you play him. If he's hurt and doesn't play, that makes AJ Dillon an automatic start. So 2 running back situations where there's a lot of timeshare. And so, as owners of one or the other, you're hoping one of them is out because that means you can fully deploy the other one. Allen Lazard's probably the only pass catcher on the Packers side right now that I feel comfortable starting just because Dobbs is hurt. and anybody else is not very reliable. So he is the one guy that I think Rodgers at least trusts. And Rodgers, I don't believe he was at practice the last couple of days either. So I don't know what the status of Aaron Rodgers is. It's probably just because he's sick and tired and doesn't fucking want to play. I don't even think he's really hurt. So I don't blame him with how bad that team is playing. But on the Cowboys side, the Packers defense statistically is still pretty good, despite their win-loss record. But if I have Dak, I'm probably starting him. If I have Dalton Schultz, I'm starting him because he has a great connection with Dak. I don't feel as great about CD Lamb, even though it sucks because he is a guy you drafted pretty high. So you're probably forced to start him, especially now with the starting quarterback back. And I'm actually starting the Cowboys defense. So never thought I'd start a defense against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, but here we are. This is a weird and different season. That pass rush is just too damn good right now. And until I can see a offensive line stop them, there will be sacks. There will be possibles for forced fumbles, and sacks and pressure means the opportunity for turnovers. And the Cowboys defense notorious for that. So I feel pretty confident starting the Cowboys defense. I have zero confidence in anything of Green Bay. I keep giving him a chance to redeem themselves. When are they going to go on the run? They kind of have to. Like we talked about Tampa Bay, they have to win, right? They have no choice. Well, I thought that about Green Bay last week against the worst team in the league in the Detroit Lions, and they put up 9 offensive points. So now I have no faith in them. Now I am full on fading Green Bay until they prove me otherwise. So deploy everybody on Dallas. I'm starting Dallas's defense. On the Packers side, Aaron Jones, if he plays, Alan Lazard, probably because you're desperate, AJ Dillon, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, or if, again, bye weeks and you don't have any other options.
Yeah, I think you start Cowboys defense all the time, unless you're playing against Mahomes or Allen. Even against the Eagles, I'm playing the Cowboys defense.
Yep, I agree. All
right, the 2 defenses I'm never going to play. Cardinals and the Rams play each other. Cardinals visit the Rams. Rams are favored by 1.5. I don't know why. Over-unders at 41. Who leads the leagues in offensive plays? The Cardinals lead the league in offensive plays. Why do they lead the league in offensive plays? You can do your best guess. But what I think is because of all these pick sixes their defense has been getting on like a couple of first play drives. And that just means more Kyler Murray has time for the ball, and their defense hasn't been doing so great as far as holding opponents. So they're scoring a lot quicker. And then Kyler Murray can always extend plays with his feet. So elongated drives. That's why they are number 1 in most offensive plays. They're number 9 in time of possession, number 10 in points, number 12 in yards, number 11 in passing yards. So this is all in the top half, top 33% of the league. So the potential is there. It's not like the team is like the Raiders or even like the Packers where they're not moving the ball enough. They're moving the ball. That's not the problem here. The problem is much, much deeper. It's straight up philosophical at this point. There's a lot of fingers being pointed here and there. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but the potential is there. Just keep in mind, don't give up on these players that I'm about to talk to you about because they move the ball. Defense on the Cardinals side, 32nd in points. God dang, 30th in pass yards, rushing yards is 18th. But why would you rush against the Cardinals when they're 32nd in passing? So I expect Cooper Kupp to do Cooper Kupp things. I even expect some people to go ahead and start, Allen Robinson over some of these other more common names that have a tougher matchup. It's 32nd in pass defense is no joke, guys. Like that screams fantasy points for receivers. And for that reason, you should be pretty confident in starting at least Cooper Kupp with as your like highest scorer of the week. DeAndre Hopkins, Connor, Kyler, and Rondell Moore all are startable this game. Rams really haven't done much as far as holding anything back on some of the superstars on the other side of the field. Rams offense is 27th in plays, 30th in points, 31st in yards, 23rd in passing yards, 31st in rushing yards. Time of possession, they're 10th. So they're holding onto the ball too because of these Cooper Kupp slants and Cooper Kupp drags and Cooper Kupp's this and Cooper Kupp's that. So it's all Cooper Kupp. There's really nothing else about this Rams offense I like. There's nowhere else you should really make a point to go towards unless you're forced to. On 12 teams, 14 teams, Allen Robinson will be a good, not a good, but a startable option because of this 32nd ranked Cardinals defense. But yeah, again, Jalen Ramsey was absolutely right. I know the way he said things on the post-game press conference was that's not how you do it. That's how you make enemies. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong. You stop a team that, it's a Tom Brady led fourth quarter offense. You can only stop that so many times. And when you do that, the offense has to do something. You can't have a 3 and out and just put the defense back on the field that quickly. And the stats prove it, right? The offense is just piss poor. They're 31st in yards. They're just like, they're all over the place. And the defense is 5th in yards, 11th in passing yards allowed, 3rd in rushing yards allowed, 2nd in rushing touchdowns allowed, and 2nd in red zone touchdowns. So they're stepping up when they need to step up. The offense is doing absolutely nothing, and this is what happens when you have the other end of the spectrum. A lot of teams we talk about have good offenses and bad defenses, and they're like, oh, well, like that sucks. But when you have a good defense and a bad offense, it's way more chaotic.
Yeah, neither team deserves to be favored. They should just have a neutral line for this game because it's literally a coin toss.
Yeah, I would favor the Cardinals a little bit just because they've moved the ball. All the stats point towards no problems moving the ball versus the Rams have some serious issues.
Next up, we go to Sunday Night Football where the Chargers are facing the 49ers. 49ers are favored by 7 points. The over-under is 45.5. The Chargers are facing the number 1 pass defense in total yards allowed and rushing yards allowed. So it's going to be a very tough matchup for the Chargers to come in here and beat the 49ers, who have explosive players on offense. They've got Deebo Samuel, who's coming back, CMC, who's averaging 5.2 rushing yards per carry, and even Brandon Ayuk, who just finds ways to get to the red zone. Ayuk is an interesting start for me. I'm debating between Joshua Palmer or Ayuk, and Sukar, I talked to you about this outside of the podcast, and I think you've convinced me. Joshua Palmer is the start here. He's the wide receiver 1, given that Mike Williams is out, and so and Keenan Allen, so he's going to have to get the ball from Justin Herbert.
Someone has to. They're going to have to throw the football. Yeah,
exactly. So Justin Herbert, Eckler, Palmer are the guys from the Chargers that you're starting, and on the 49ers, like I mentioned, Deebo, CMC, Ayuk. 49ers have just a favorable matchup here coming from the bye. Chargers barely just beat Atlanta by 3 points last week, so they should come and be able to win this game and defeat the Chargers.
Don't forget about Everett. Everett is also a startable option on the Chargers.
Yeah, I'd say the weapons are more startable than Herbert right now, just because of the lack of weapons, right? Because the weapons, Palmer can have 8 for 106, and Herbert can throw 1 total touchdown, right? And for Palmer, it's a great day, or no touchdowns. Exactly. So it's tough with the defense. They did lose Jason Verrett. I don't know if you guys saw that. Cornerback Jason Verrett tore his Achilles, which. This year, he tore his right Achilles. Last year, he tore his right ACL. 3 years ago, he tore his left Achilles. And then 5 years ago, he tore his left ACL, bro. Like, the dude cannot catch a break. I feel absolutely awful for him. But that's just awful. Tore his Achilles in practice yesterday, and he's out for season. So they've been, we've seen the 49ers, how dominant their defense can be. And a lot of it is surrounded by Nick Bosa, who should play. Joey Bosa is trending towards playing too. So we could see a Bosa versus Bosa showdown for the first time in the NFL. That would be cool. But if Verrett is out, and, if the defensive line can't get there, then all of a sudden, the 49ers defense is just the name and not actually the product on the field. And so I had 49ers defense, and I saw a huge difference when Bosa played it versus when Bosa didn't play. So that pass rush is key to the defense. And I think right now, as long as the pass rush is there, you're probably starting them even with the name, the Chargers, thinking, oh my God, wild flying offense. You probably don't want to start defenses against them. They're not the same right now. They have nobody. They're decimated. They're absolutely decimated. And the defense is also so decimated that it puts the offense behind the 8 ball, which then causes the offense to make mistakes, which also helps opposing fantasy defenses. So they're just in a pretty bad situation. I am shocked beyond my core that they're 5-3. Kudos to them. Let's end the rundown with Monday Night Football. The Philadelphia Eagles still undefeated, still searching for that first loss, or are they? The Commanders come into town. Eagles division game favored by 11 points. Wild. Over under 44. For the Eagles, it's fly Eagles fly right now. Jalen Hurts, start him and forget him. Miles Sanders, just because they run the football, start him and forget him. AJ Brown is a monster. The problem is sometimes the game script doesn't go in his favor, but you can't not start him. So you start him and forget him. Dallas Goedert's become one of the most reliable tight ends in the league. Start him and forget him. Eagles defense, we talked about it. You're going against Taylor Heineke, who is due. He absolutely will throw an interception or two. He will probably get sacked a couple times. He'll probably fumble the football. So that defense is a must start as well. On the Commanders side, they're going to be desperate. The only guy I really like, believe it or not, how did we get here? Paul Rudd meme is Antonio Gibson, because they have to get the football somewhere. And Gibson shows the most promise, both getting the ball in the backfield and catching out of the backfield. So I like him the most in terms of the Commander side. You could get desperate and start Terry McLaurin, which is not the worst start just because of his connection with Taylor Heineke. So if you're starting a receiver on that side, Terry McLaurin. If you're just, holding on to a prayer, maybe Curtis Samuel, but McLaurin and Gibson probably the only startable guys on the other side for the Eagles. Again, all full go, full send. I don't like the line being so big. I think the Commanders have a chance to play this game a little bit closer. Call me crazy. Eagles probably still win this football game, but give me the Commanders plus 11. A lot of points in a divisional game.
Upset alert. Heineke about to get some green and white and black shirts.
That would look sick on Jays. That's it. That's it for the rundown, guys. Let's jump into our marquee fantasy matchup of the week. We each are going to highlight one player that we think is destined to pop off. These names should not surprise you. We've already probably talked about them in their matchup, so I'll run through mine quickly. No brainer for me, Saquon Barkley against the Texans defense. Any running back that is competent against the Texans defense should be the matchup start of the week every week until Houston proves that they can do anything to shut down running backs. Again, I've given you a laundry list of fantasy points that the Texans defense has allowed to opposing running backs, and Saquon's about one of the best running backs in the league, so expect nothing less. He is my matchup start or fantasy matchup of the week.
My fantasy matchup of the week, typical, usual number one player in fantasy of all time, CMC. You guys are probably wondering, oh, well, that's obvious. But yes, but here's the perfect situation. There is no such thing as a perfect situation except for this one. CMC has had 2 weeks under his belt, and now he's full go as far as the playbook. They're even starting to throw passes with him, catching balls, rushing. The limit does not exist. And now you're facing a Chargers offense who's the bottom of the barrel as far as stopping the run, stopping the pass. They're just bad. They're bad on every level, and they have enough firepower to keep the game alive. So that just means CMC gets used all throughout the game. That's the trifecta. That's the trifecta. Bad offense, used high volume, and game script favored. That means you're going to have a successful day. It's as simple as that. So for me, CMC gets start. And if we're not talking about some obvious picks, I think Najee Harris, I mentioned earlier, I think he has a pretty good day. Not insane day, but I think it's something to talk about because a lot of people are probably just fading him already, and I think there's a situation here.
Awesome. So my fantasy matchup of the week is Justin Fields versus the Lions. The Lions ranked 32nd in points allowed and yards allowed, and have given up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this season. Fields is just playing lights out. He's able to do it with his feet, his legs, and he's making key throws and getting touchdowns. So, all signs point to Justin Fields having a solid game, probably not 50 points or 42 points like last week, but certainly the ceiling is high for Justin Fields.
Those are the matchups of the week. Pretty obvious names, but the matchups warrant talking about them one more time because the matchups are just so juicy and so exciting. Out of those three guys, who do you think scores the most amount of points and who scores the least amount of points?
CMC.
Scores the most?
Yeah. Damn, that's tough because that means I got to pick.
Yeah, that's how good those matchups are. That's how good those three matchups are.
I'll go Fields. It's unfair. I'll go Fields, CMC.
Quarterback. Yeah, quarterback, I would assume probably will score most just because he's a running back that's a quarterback. So he has the ball in his hands all the time. So I go Fields and CMC just because now they kind of look at him as a quarterback too. So he's got that triple threat option. So Barkley, step up your game, bro. I need Barkley. I need Barkley to throw a touchdown pass this week.
I'm audibling. I'm going to go Fields, Saquon, then CMC.
Wow.
Interesting.
Just because what the fuck is Saquon going to do? What is that team going to do? Who's the ball going to go to? It's
Saquon. Yeah. Last but not least, guys, I told you last week I was going to try my best to reach out to a Raiders fan on social media and just kind of get the lay of the land. And so I forgot. One of my Twitter buddies, his name is Greg. I don't know how we followed each other. I think it was because of the Lakers back in 2013. So I've been following this guy on Twitter for 9 years. And I forgot that he's a Raiders fan. And we used to talk shit the year that the Raiders drafted Derek Carr and the Vikings drafted Teddy Bridgewater about who's going to be a better quarterback. And it's funny looking back at it now because, maybe Derek Carr was the better quarterback, but can you really quantify Derek Carr as the better quarterback with the fact that neither of them have done anything? So I asked him, I was like, dude, this is what I said. I said, I need you to just explain to me what the fuck is going on with the Raiders, man. Only Raiders fan I know, and I just have no idea. And he just said, they just suck, plain and simple, LOL. And I was like, no, tell me more. He's like, and he's a huge Derek Carr guy. So this is probably where the bias comes in. He's like extremely talented quarterback. That's very inconsistent. They have great weapons, but their coaching is awful and their offensive line sucks. And I asked him, what are his thoughts of Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels? And he's like, I like him, but if McDaniels can't figure it out, then there's no point in keeping Derek Carr because he's so expensive. And Carr and Adams have already complained about the coaching, so it's all just a shit show. And what's funny about that is a lot of times franchises, whenever they're in shambles, they make dramatic changes, right? Think about where the Raiders were at the beginning of last year. They had Henry Ruggs. John Gruden was their head coach. There's been so much that has gone on from the start of last season with the Raiders to where they're at now that, we talk about so much in sports, but what everybody in sports requires is consistency. We use that word a lot, and the Raiders can't keep anything consistent. They can't keep ownership consistent. They can't keep the coaches consistent. They can't even keep the players consistent. So, long story short, I just think the way he's viewing the Raiders is exactly how people who aren't Raiders fans are also viewing them. So I don't think even the Raiders themselves have answers for what's going on. And that's the worst place to be, right? Imagine being in a situation where even as fans, like we talk about the Vikings every single year, even as pleasure, right? And we always know kind of what the root cause of the problem is or what we can point the finger on. But with the Raiders, they are such a mess that there's nowhere to really point the finger. And I think that's the worst place to be for a franchise, because where do you start if you're looking to, cut bait or move on or change things? And I think, again, what have I said? I honestly think it starts with Derek Carr. Like you got a brand new head coach. You've already had 3 head coaches in the last 2 years, right? Less than 2 years with the interim and then the new hire and then John Gruden. So I think the one constant has been Derek Carr, and Derek Carr shows flashes of brilliance and then he shows flashes of absolute shittiness. So I think the one constant is Derek Carr. Greg totally echoes that, even though he loves Derek Carr. He is not opposed to moving on. So I think that's the shit show that is the Raiders. Thank you for responding to my tweets and interacting. What do you guys have?
Extremely talented and inconsistent don't go well together. That's not.
It's like an oxymoron. It's like an oxymoron, right? And again, I think that's where a little bit of his bias, a little bit of the fact that he knows him and I talk shit about the quarterbacks from 2015 come in, but still, it's tough to be a Raiders fan. So kudos to you for sticking through it. But that's what we have. And I kind of want to make this a weekly segment. So a team that performs the absolute shittiest, I'm going to try to go out on Twitter sphere, find a fan, and just have them say a few words, and then we'll share it on the pod. So thank you so much, Greg. Greg at Twitter at 2Weezy. So thanks, Greg, for your input on the Raiders and their shit show. That is all we have. Week 10 is officially going to kick off here in less than an hour. What an amazing game that we get to watch. Shasho, you're going to be at work. So actually, I'd probably rather be you, because this game does not look like it's going to be very fun. Falcons and what was it? Falcons and who? Panthers. Falcons and Panthers. My God, what a awful Thursday night football matchup. But I know we don't do bets on the podcast anymore. I did take one bet this game. Terrence Marshall over 2.5 receptions. So
money.
2.5 seems so low. It seems so low.
He's going to have 2 touchdowns by the end of the third quarter, and they're going to have to catch up, and it's just going to be Terrence Marshall because DJ Moore is just not going to be the guy. That's going to they have a thing going on with Terrence Marshall, and they're going to have to use him. There's just
3 catches. Yeah, 3 catches. Make it happen. That's it, guys. That is another week, another episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Hopefully your team wins. Hopefully your fantasy team wins, and hopefully you win a lot of money. I'm Sweet Card. That's your show. That's Showbit. We're the only playbook. See you guys next week.